Hey, it's Kaero. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome to this newest episode of generating and rating artificial intelligence magic cards using Urzas A.I. Our rating scale is 0, absolutely unplayable, to 10, the most busted bomb that you've ever seen. We're going to be rating them on that scale. There are other parts if you check the description if you want to see more videos like this. And consider, if you like the video, please hitting that thumbs up for me and subscribe for future episodes. So without further ado, let's go. All right off the bat, starting with a pretty metal card name, Touch of Death. 1 black, 2 generic for an instant. Exile target creature and all other cards from all graveyards. Pretty good. Remove a creature. Use this against reanimator decks or anybody that cares about having their graveyard as a resource. For sure, a good sideboard card. Might be a main deck in certain metas. Can anybody say awesome against Tarmogoyf? In his final moments, it tried to turn against the fold, is the flavor text. All right, this is a cool card. I like this. This is probably like a 6 against Tarmogoyf. Anything with a reanimator concern, this is like higher than that. This is probably 6, 7, something like that. Next, we have Ristic Refund. 1 black, 3 generic for an instant. Target player puts that many +1/+1 counters on a creature they control. That many is what? Just whatever you choose? Whenever you're like, I'm going to put a bunch of counters on that creature, and they're like, how many? And you go, that many. What's the flavor text? When Remez announced that a fight would be coming, a healer opened a mission for it. The danger was many to many. All right. Well, I don't know how many counters gets placed, but if you get to place whatever you want, this is a 10. If not, it's probably like a 1. Okay, colorless artifact creature construct. Sparkmage Snapcaster. 2 generic for a 2/2. Whenever Sparkmage Snapcaster deals combat damage to a player, exile the top card of that player's library face down. You may look at it for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast that card. And the flavor text is, the story of the catapult is always the same. Same story all the time with these catapults, you know? You meet a catapult, you expect to find a different thing. It's just always the same with these catapults. 2 mana for a 2/2. They have to deal with this, right? Because if you're able to just attack with this, make it unblockable, give it double strike, do something like that, you're exiling lots of cards off the top of their library. The thing is, it's not going to be able to get in too often, except for like in a control versus a control deck or something that just doesn't have any chump blockers or any defense. But the fact that they have to deal with this, otherwise you get to just get cards from their library and play them, is pretty good. And I think that if you deal damage once or twice with this, you exile those cards. This thing doesn't have to remain on the battlefield for you to be able to play them. So if you could play this early, get in for a couple hits, exile a couple cards, I think this is pretty good. I think it's like a 6 or 7. Silent Spasm. 1 blue, 2 generic for an instant. Tap target creature. It doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So not a super powerful card, but I do like the card design and that the AI is saying, oh, you're having a silent spasm. So you just tap down for a minute and then you come out of the spasm and then you're ready to go again. This is actually really intuitive and really good design on the AI's part. What's the flavor text? After the collapse of Ravnica, the Null Country will not enter the Great Mardu Woodbelt. I don't know if Mardu is known for their forests. I guess that's what the Wood Belt is, but the Null Country is not going to be in there, especially after the collapse of Ravnica. They're not allowed. So saith the Gnarl Trunk Mystic. So yeah, I mean this card's like a 2, but I really like that the AI matched the flavor here, and it seems to fit in with the theme of the name of the card. Master Sword. Is it the Master Sword from Legend of Zelda? 1 generic for an artifact equipment. Okay. Equipped creature gets +1/+0 and has protection from white and from blue. Equipped for 2. And the flavor text is, the swarm uses great power to follow your every move. So the art in this looks like the Master Sword is actually just a jackhammer. And I really like the fact that it's in a cave, because traditionally you have white and blue. The enemy color for that is red. And I think that this fits in very well with the flavor text of being red. So you equip this and have protection from white and blue. Also gives power and no toughness. I think this card is a sideboard card against white and blue if you're playing a mono red aggro deck or something like that, or even a different color. But the equip cost is reasonable, the cost is reasonable, and I think in decks that care about equipments and artifacts, this is actually pretty good. I'm going to give it like a 6. Next up is Sky Spear. 1 white, 2 generic for a human rebel at 2 power, 2 toughness. When Sky Spear enters the battlefield, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Okay, so you play this as a 3-drop. It's a 2/2 chump blocker whenever you have a deck that's sort of a controlling deck that cares about getting your artifacts back. So you have an artifact that you sacrifice to have an effect. You can bring it back to your hand, play it if you stabilize the board. I think this is actually pretty decent value in decks that care about artifacts. What's the flavor text? The Thresher was turned to grindstones by a dragon, but it can't be turned back. Okay. Interesting. I'm going to say this is definitely a build-around card. This is not good inherent and just by itself, but in decks that care about it, I think it could see play, and I think there could be some cool things that you could do with sacrificing an artifact, bringing it back to the hand, play it again, etc., etc. I think it's like a 5. Okay, here's Impervious Sentry. 1 white, 1 generic for a human soldier, so relevant creature type. As 2/2, it has first strike. When Impervious Sentry attacks, you may tap target creature defending player controls. This is pretty good in a white-based aggro deck with cheap creatures that wants to go wide, especially if you can get some Anthem effects or some +1/+1 counters on this thing. Being able to maintain your aggressive stance, attack in, and tap down their best blocker every turn is actually pretty good. I think this is probably like a 7 or an 8. It depends on the format, right? It has to be a faster format or allow for faster decks to be good. I don't play Commander, but I know that there's a lot of people that say that these fast type of cards that aren't good in Commander. But I think if you're doing a 1v1 combat, certain standards, thing like that, I think this is actually pretty good. And the flavor text is, all they see is a statue of a single bird. I love that. So it's an Impervious Sentry that looks like it's going through like some field. It has a helmet on, and then right behind it you can see that it's like maybe holding up a little pole with a bird on it. So it's just like creeping through. It's like, the bird's coming to get you. It's just a single bird. Wham! First strike. Yeah, I think it's like a 7. So here we have Blessing Spell. 1 white, 1 generic, instant, kicker of 1 white, 1 generic. Counter target spell if this spell was kicked. But the spell doesn't actually do anything by itself. It just counters a spell if it was kicked. So this spell is only good without the kicker for, not even good, but right, for upping your storm count or doing things that care about like previously used instants or sorceries. So this is essentially a 2 white, 2 generic counterspell in white, which, it's a white counterspell, so like Mana Tithe, but that's like really, really potent, right? That's a 1-drop. So like it's not very good, but what's the flavor text? The Mighty Elder places our greatest strength in each word. General Kicker Pockets. Okay. You know what time it is. We have to find out what General Kicker Pockets does. I'm going to give this card like a 3 or a 2. I wish that it had some effect, even if the effect was just like you gain 2 life, and then if this was kicked, counter target spell, because then it would have some sort of effect. I think there was missed potential here, even if it was just a minor effect. We're going to find out what General Kicker Pockets does. Oh my god. General Kicker Pockets. 1 white, 1 generic for a creature, Kicker Pockets. It's a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield, target creature gets +1/+1 till end of turn. Okay, so like limited fodder, but look at the art. General Kicker Pockets is just a disembodied pair of legs from a football player. And I love it so much. This card is a 10 out of 10. What's the flavor text? The followers of General Kicker are less willing to die for a better cause. it's just legs. Kicker Pockets. I love it. But actually he has no pockets because he's wearing a football uniform. I don't know. Tell me what you think about the comments. You put Kicker Pockets in your deck, right? Just to have it. For the art. Brimstone Thrall. 4 generic mana for an artifact creature thrall at power and toughness 3/3 for 4. Not bad. 1 generic mana, sacrifice Brimstone Thrall. Put target artifact card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Okay, so you could, I'm thinking, reanimate like large artifact creatures or something like that. It's not very good against your opponent because the chance of them having specifically artifact cards for you to reanimate of theirs and take theirs is pretty slim, especially because like if this costs 1 or 2, something like that, you maybe could get away with it getting some value, but you really want a big artifact creature or some sort of thing like the Great Henge or something like massive that can really get you some value here. But I will say this, I'm not quite aware of it, but there is probably some sort of quasi-infinite sort of combo you could do. You could play Brimstone Thrall, you could sacrifice it, put another artifact from a graveyard into the battlefield. That artifact has an enter the battlefield effect, like draw a card or do something, and then you have something else where you can sack an artifact, bring another one back, so you could maybe create some sort of cycle with this that I'm not aware of, but this card looks to me like it's prime real estate for some sort of cycle like that to gain value, whether it's blink or, you know, whatever. If you're aware of something like that, let me know in the comments. I would love to hear about it and learn a little bit about more about it. But what is the flavor text on this? It dreams of a vast beyond, a life as one with nothing to lose but their dreams. That seems flavorful for an artifact creature. So it has like these weird dreams, a life as one with nothing, right? It's contemplating its own lack of maybe sentience or something. That's actually really cool. I love the art. The fact that it doesn't really have a face is kind of cool and creepy. I'm going to say this card is like a build around. On its own is probably like a 4, right? Because it's very situational, maybe a sideboard card. But like if you could assemble some combo with it, I could see it being good. So I'm going to say it's like a 4, but like maybe like potentially a 7 or an 8. Next up is Ioblight Camel. 1 white, 1 generic for a creature. It's a bird, but it's also a camel. All right, this is a weird plane, whatever this is from. 1/1 flying. Whenever Ioblight Camel attacks, tap target creature defending player controls. All right, so we had a card similar to this earlier, but this one is flying. So right off the bat, I think this one's probably a little worse than that one. That one was a 2/2 first strike. So if you have a 2-drop 1/1 flying creature, tapping a creature defending player controls only really comes into effect if they have a flyer and you have another ground unit and they have a ground unit that you want to get something else through. So this by itself is worse. But I think it's still decent, especially if you can have a bunch of little tiny creatures like in white weenie decks, things like that. The flavor text is her only living tools are. All right. Flying Camel taps things down. I mean, if you saw a Flying Camel come at you, wouldn't you probably like be stunned for a second too? You'd be like, oh, what? And your brain goes offline and then you're tapped. I'm going to say it's like probably a 4, something like that. Next up is Draconic Ogre. 1 black, 2 generic for a zombie ogre at 2/2. All right. And then an activated ability of 1 black, 2 generic to tap it. Exile target card from a graveyard. Create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. So how do I rate this? This is interesting. So you play this in a black-based sacrifice deck or a token deck, I guess. So you can either use these zombies as sacrifice fodder to generate more value, or you could potentially attack in with them, but I don't think they're fast enough. I don't think it's strong enough to make a big zombie army like this and have good attacks, especially when they come in tapped and they can't be used to block. So if they weren't tapped, your opponent comes in with a 2/2 or whatever, you're able to pay the mana, create a zombie, block, gain some value there. But it's also too expensive. So you play this on turn 3, that's your best solution, and then you let them go. Comes back to your turn, you have 4 mana. This, you have to keep 3 mana open to start generating 2/2 zombies. I don't think it's fast enough. If this was, let's say, Draconic Ogre cost 2 and the ability cost 2, then we're kind of getting into the playability territory here. It's just too expensive, it's too slow. I'm going to give it like a 2 or a 3. But the flavor text is great. It simply says, it could kill its master. It wants you to know that. You play it, and it's like, I could kill you. Just so you know, I'm not going to, but it could. All right? So the flavor text is cool. Too slow. I think it's like a 2 or a 3. Okay, here we have Crowded Roost. It's a bird, so we're getting a lot of flyers here. 1 black, 1 generic for a bird creature, 1/1 flying. And when Crowded Roost enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So this seems like very much like a white card. The fact that it's in black is weird, but I guess also kind of cool. So at the floor of this is a 2/2 flyer for 2, which is not bad. So if you have some sort of aggro deck in black, this is cool. If you have some way to abuse +1/+1 counters, it's kind of cool. So I don't know. This comes in on turn 2. You already have a decent creature. Or maybe you have a, well, what could you have on turn 1 that you really want to put a counter on? I think most of the time this is going to be a 2/2 flying for 2, which sometimes is okay. I think it's like a 4. What's the flavor text? If a crow flies away, there's always a tiny wee space between it and the roof of the Rhyme Slayer. All right. This is cool. I like seeing black cards like this, especially when this would be a white card. That's going to conclude this episode of rating AI-generated magic cards. If you liked the video, please hit the thumbs up for me, consider subscribing for future episodes, and have a great day.